Hello there, and good afternoon. My name is Michael Edson. I am a licensed acupuncturist, practicing over 20 years, and president of Natural Eye Care. And you see the website naturalecare.com. I'd like to thank the American Acupuncture Council for the opportunity to speak to everybody today and to give them information related to my latest book, Natural Brain Support, Your Guide to Preventing and Treating Alzheimer's and Dementia and Other Related Diseases. I am filling in for Virginia Duran today, and I'm excited to speak with you. The book is was the reason I wrote the book for is a number of reasons. One, because I have um, had relatives with Alzheimer's who are passed away from Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, and one of the main book from Natural Eye Care that Dr. Grossman and I co-wrote, he's my partner, is Natural Eye Care, Your Guide to Healthy Vision and Healing. That book is an 800-page book and goes into how to treat eye disease naturally. And while doing a lot of the research for the book, what was really amazing to me was that the nutrients that actually support the retina and the rest of the eyes and the optic nerve, when I was looking at the research, I kept on coming across additional research related to the fact that these nutrients cross the blood-brain barrier. And we'll talk more about the blood-brain barrier shortly. But it went to the brain, and the brain uses these nutrients to keep the brain healthy. And they're critical for preventing Alzheimer's, preventing dementia, reducing brain fog, and just keeping a healthy cognitive functioning. So I started collecting all that research and gathering it. I'm sorry, I have to find my pen here. Okay. And gathering it and accumulated over 3,200 peer-reviewed research references related to how to keep the brain healthy. And in the book, and we'll go into more detail, I cover over 50 nutrients. And those nutrients, it gets complicated because a lot of those nutrients have many different functions within the brain. So there's a chart with over 19 categories of what different ways that these nutrients can help the brain. And I have an X mark in each category for each nutrient. And we're going to go into many essential nutrients during this conversation. Okay, I think we can start with the slides. All right, so that is the name of the book. You'll see that there's fruit and vegetables, very critical to keeping healthy. Okay. All right, the brain is really an amazing organ. It's the most physiological active part of the body. As you can see, it is only 2% of the body weight, but represents 25% of the nutrient intake. With 100 billion brain cells and synapse, 7 to 10 synapses per second. We'll talk about what a synapse is, interacting with 7 to 10,000 cells a second. We're talking about trillions of interactions per second. And it's really, if you think about that, how is that even possible? So there's a lot of chemical activities that go on between neurotransmitters and hormones and interactions between the brain cells. But the only way that I can think of, and this is theoretical, is that it's some form of light, because that's the only thing that can travel that quickly that can produce that many transactions. And so that leads me into, we talk about chi all the time. So maybe that is what chi is, and that travels that quickly in the body to help promote these types of trillions of transactions that go on a second, which is quite remarkable. And I talked about the eyes and the relationship to the eyes and the brain. The optic nerve is actually brain tissue. So it makes sense that what affects the optic nerve affects the brain, what affects the brain affects the optic nerve. The retina was created in the womb from brain cell from brain cells. So this correlation between healthy vision and healthy brain function is very strong. As a matter of fact, from an eye exam, they can also see early signs of Alzheimer's, which is the beta amyloid buildup in the retina before it's ever diagnosed as Alzheimer's, notwithstanding multiple sclerosis, hypertension, diabetes, and many other conditions also appear in the retina often before it becomes obvious that it's a health condition. It's Alzheimer's is an epidemic, and particularly related to the fact that people living longer, and it's for the most part an age-related disease, in my opinion. I mean, there is a genetic aspect that we'll talk about for sure. That usually appears more in people who are maybe 40, 60 years old. But the reason that these types of diseases are happening as they get older is the underlying causes of what can cause or contribute to Alzheimer's disease, notwithstanding poor circulation, inflammatory conditions, autoimmune conditions, poor digestion. We don't produce as many enzymes in our system to break down the food. People become more sedentary. Maybe the emotional balance is not, don't feel as engaged in society. All these things play a part in both vision and brain health. As you see that over 6 million people today have it, and it's growing dramatically every year. It's really an epidemic. Okay. It's a neurodegenerative disease, which means that there's many parts that take place that cause dementia and Alzheimer's and other types of and Parkinson's and other types of brain illnesses. And it really needs to be looked at that way because you can't, it's not a single issue problem. Even though beta amyloid builds up in the brain, and you also have something called tau protein and fibroid fibers that cause brain damage, why is that happening? And in order to really deal with Alzheimer's and dementia and prevention, you have to look at the underlying reasons why that's happening. And I mentioned a few here, and I mentioned a few before, which is chronic inflammation, blood-brain barrier compromised. Blood-brain barrier is what prevents unwanted materials from reaching the brain, and that would include pathogens and metals and other types of materials that you don't want to get to the brain. And when that gets compromised, then materials are getting to the brain that are causing brain damage as well. I mentioned norepinephrine here because it's one of the hormones, essential hormones that all acts as a neurotransmitter in the brain. Neurotransmitters are what passes information from brain cell to brain cell. And so neurotransmitters are really critical. We're going to go into more of that. And I did mention that beta amyloid, neurofibrillary tangles, and hyper-tau protein is what's seen in the brain through MRIs when they see Alzheimer's disease. Tau protein in a normal balance helps keep the microstructures of the cells. So if that gets affected, then the cell structures start to weaken. Beta amyloid in normal amounts is very important for neurotransmission and brain function, but when it builds up, it starts damaging brain cells, also affecting mitochondrial function. And I know all of you know what mitochondria is. It's the energy cell of the body. It's the battery of our cells that keep the cells functioning and energized. So mitochondrial dysfunction also has to be looked at very closely. And in the book, I go into the nutrients that support the mitochondria, support the blood-brain barrier, reduce inflammation, also help reduce beta amyloid plaque and hyperphosphorylated tau protein and neural tangles. These can be done through diet and exercise. The 3,200 plus studies in the book that are all in the neurological magazines, and then the research is in there. So it's medically proven, but it's not really followed by the medical community. Let's start with diet and lifestyle, because obviously these are really critical. So eating a healthy diet is essential. What is a healthy diet? What the best diets have in common is they have lots of fruits and vegetables. Green leafy vegetables are really great. It's very low in refined carbohydrates. Obviously, you're avoiding um, fried foods and unhealthy oils. And we're going to go into the fried foods and what not to eat, the foods to avoid. So you want to keep a low carbohydrate diet, particularly all the white foods. So what do you have? White rice, white pasta, white bread, all the refined carbohydrates. You want to keep a low sugar diet. Stevia is a good alternative if you want to sweeten something up. So there are different diets. The Mediterranean diet is good. The South Street diet is good. But again, the common thing is the very low refined carbohydrates and sugars. And some people like meat. If they're eating meat, it should be as best as possible grass-fed, organic meats. And and then foods to avoid. Avoid um, Well, diabetes is an epidemic in society, and uh, I think the numbers are up to 70% of people that either have diabetes or have high sugar. So high sugar is one of the really severe detriments to the brain. What happens when we have excess sugar in the diet? The brain actually produces, along with the pancreas, its own insulin. That's how important insulin is to energy production within the brain. So when there's excess sugar, that means the brain has to produce more insulin to break down the sugar. Insulin also keeps beta amyloid in check. So if you're not having the insulin available to keep the beta amyloid in check, it's one of the reasons beta amyloid can increase and start causing brain damage. Insulin is also critical for other functions of the brain related to cognitive functioning. So avoid all sugary drinks, even juices to a limit very high in sugar. Um, Aspartame and artificial sweeteners, they're toxic to the brain. They produce Aspartame produces aspartic acid and methanol, which is toxic to brain cells, and and it causes also hyperactivity in the brain. So you want to avoid those at all costs. Again, stevia is a good alternative. Avoid generally foods that are in um, aluminum cans. Okay, so because aluminum produces aldehydes, and aldehydes prevent the breakdown, or actually cause increases in production of protein in the brain, and could include amyloid plaque and tau protein, and diminishes the body. The proteolysis is the brain's ability to break down protein. It restricts the body's ability to do that. Keep meat down to a minimum. The studies have been clear that diets high in meat increase the likelihood of the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So meats are, notwithstanding with the hormones and the pesticides that are added, and avoid fried foods. So fried foods cause damage to the brain, toxic to the brain, and they uh, they increase ROS, which is reactive oxygen species, which is a very aggressive form of free radicals that break down healthy cells. So we all know that free radicals have an extra electron at the end, and they will grab that electron from a healthy cell, causing it to be unhealthy and die. And that's why the antioxidants are so important, because the antioxidants provide the extra electron to neutralize the free radicals. We're going to go into antioxidants and essential nutrients such as glutathione, which is a master antioxidant. That's one of the few, along with superoxide dismutase, that can neutralize the full spectrum of free radicals in the body. And it's actually the antioxidant used in the greatest quantity in the brain. And the studies have shown that people with Alzheimer's are significantly deficient in glutathione in the brain. So you wonder, why the doctors aren't telling people to minimally supplement with glutathione, but that's only one of the many ones that are deficient. I guess while I'm on the topic, the other ones that are deficient are B complexes, B1, B2, B6, B12, vitamin D3, some of the minerals such as magnesium, selenium, zinc. Um, these are all critical, and when they're deficient, they can cause brain damage because because of the free radical activity. But also, what's really fascinating is the deficiency in in these nutrients can actually mimic Alzheimer's dementia. So, in fact, for people that are that have a diminishment of that, they may look like they have it, and they may be being treated for it by the doctors for Alzheimer's, but yet if the deficiency is just because of the nutrient deficiency, that could be the underlying cause, and not that they actually have dementia or Alzheimer's. Um, Exercise cuts across all. I mentioned 19 categories. I mentioned that I have in the book. It cuts across all 19 categories. By the way, curcumin does as well. Ashwagandha is really good. They base glutathione. These do cut across most, if not all, the categories of what they help. They help with the brain. Stress. We live in a society high in stress. I mean, we know it. And I was looking at a study this morning that said 3.2% of people in the United States are suffering from PTSD. And that could be the tremor, that can be due to the chronic stress associated with work, relationships, money. And stress can actually reduce the size of parts of the brain, including the amygdala, which, among many other things, processes our emotional memories. So, stress is important to keep that under control. Meditation, yoga, qigong, these are all taking regular walks in the woods. These are all really important. Breathing. Remember to breathe. When we get stressed out, when we get upset, we stop breathing. Stop. Take some nice long breaths. Calm down. Get everything going again. Emotional balance. We know the five elements in Chinese medicine: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. That keeping emotions in balance are really important. Um, Being angry and stressful can cause excess cortisone production in the brain, and cortisone causes excess hyper excitability, and that can actually be, as important as cortisone is for neurotransmission, can cause destruction in brain cells as well when there's too much in the brain. The cholinergic system is essential for brain functioning and for neurotransmission. Is the communication between cell to cell, the brain cells. Acetylcholine I mentioned because that's one of the critical, among many actually, one of the critical neurotransmitters in the brain. Choline is one of the underlying precursors to acetylcholine. And what's interesting about acetylcholine is that it's one of the main treatments that the drugs try and address is the imbalance of acetylcholine to acetylcholinesterase. So acetylcholinesterase and acetylcholine keep each other in balance. So what the dopanesyl does is it helps reduce acetylcholinesterase to try and keep the acetylcholine up. Um, but the drugs don't work. I mean, my my relatives got the drugs; they just continually get worse because they're not looking at the wider picture of what the underlying causes of the imbalances are and addressing the underlying causes, which can be, again, some of them inflammation, chronic stress, um, metal exposure to environmental exposures, um, the inability to interference with neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is the body's ability to produce new brain cells, and we can do that. And up until the 1990s, they thought that the brain cells that we were born with were the ones that we would die with. But in fact, the brain produce new brain cells all through life until we die, and a lot of nutrients, including ashwagandha and many others, actually promote neurogenesis, new brain cells. Epigenetics. Epigenetics underlying is the thought that again, they thought that genetics, the way we were born, not only was the way we looked, but it would control the diseases we got later on. But they found the fact that epigenetics is environmentally also causes cells to turn on and off. So that how well we were nurtured as children and fed, and how well we take care of ourselves throughout our lives actually can prevent um, not all the time, but many of the times, certain genes that we don't want turned on, turned on. I mentioned some of the food sources for choline. The book talks about food sources for all the different antioxidants as well. I mentioned the cholinergic system is related to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's, and many other psychiatric disorders as well. We did talk about mitochondria as being critical. They're related to all these diseases I list here. And when beta amyloid builds up, as associated with Alzheimer's, it actually can create a dysfunction within mitochondria, and it creates a cycle effect. So the more mitochondrial dysfunction, the less energy is available for the cells to function properly, and the more cells die off. Uh, as well as oxidative stress. We talked about the free radicals that need to be neutralized with antioxidants, essential antioxidants. I mentioned some of the nutrients in here that support mitochondria. We said alpha lipoic acid, CoQ10, some of the B vitamins, resveratrol, and this is all in the book, Shishandra. Magnesium, by the way, is also very important for managing and breaking down beta amyloid plaque. So if we're deficient in beta amyloid plaque, that's another reason why you can get an increase in beta amyloid plaque as well. So I'm really talking about a whole body approach. I'm trying to tell a story here that it's a whole body approach. Acupuncture has been doing that for 3,000 years. And in order to deal with Alzheimer's and prevention, you have to take a step back. Who is this person related to this disease? And what are the underlying causes of it that may be related to that? And then dealing with that. Because the drugs, I mentioned donepezil, another one, memetine, which has to do with reducing GABA. So that helps balance out the cholinergic system. And GABA can be increased through foods as well. So again, whole body approach. The body's meant to heal. It's trying to heal. What can we do to help that along? I mentioned the blood-brain barrier, critical. I mentioned things here that cause the breakdown of the blood-brain barrier. Astrocytes are cells in the body that are cells in the brain in relative high amounts. They're part of the glial system, and they're critical also for keeping the blood-brain barrier healthier. I mentioned aspartame and artificial sweeteners. They also break down astrocytes. It also prevents the excess glucose from reaching the brain. I mentioned some of the vitamins here that help keep the blood-brain barrier healthier. B6, B12, baselin is an herb, obviously, and resveratrol. We already talked about this, and we talk about a number of the nutrients. There's quite a few of them that can help keep everything in balance. We talk about yin and yang, and part of it is really keeping everything in balance in the body. And the way to do that is through food, diet, exercise, Chinese medicine, even Ayurvedic medicine, yoga, qigong. Gut-brain connection, very powerful. The gut represents 70% of our immune system. There's a very strong connection between the gut and the brain. The gut actually produces own neurotransmitters and hormones, and communicates with the brain all the time through the vagus nerve. It's a big problem within society that there are gut imbalances that can lead to candidiasis, and leaky gut syndrome. And these can be cause tremendous inflammation, can also cause a breakdown in the blood-brain barrier, and neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So what can cause the gut microbiota to break down? Excess sugar, poor diet, excess stress, emotional imbalances, medications, obviously excess use of antibiotics. So we really need to focus. Matter of fact, there's a whole community of doctors right now called functional medicine doctors that really start with the gut as being the basis of where disease starts from gut imbalances. Okay. Essential nutrients. I mentioned these already that tend to be deficient. I also added here CoQ10, taurine, DHA. These all are critical for brain functioning, for Alzheimer's, dementia, and and Parkinson's as well. It just well, Chinese medicines practitioners out there pretty much. I understand. That's what the organization is. So the kidney meridian overrules our hormone production and endocrine system. So we have a lot of hormones that reach the brain, that are in the brain and act as essential neurotransmitters among other essential functions. So that's one to look at. The heart meridian, obviously, we know it has to do with spirit and Shen and also circulation, but also long-term memory. The spleen meridian has to do with short-term memory as well as analysis and concentration. The dew meridian overrules all neurological activity. So we're obviously looking at all the meridians, but these are 4 key ones to look at. I just mentioned a couple of patent formulas, but there are many more out there. The Bunao one, Brain Tonic, or the Jian one are good ones to look at. But when you do your intake, you'll figure out where you want to go with which herbal formulas might be most helpful for your patients. Different complementary medicines. I didn't talk much about essential oils, but they play a big role in terms of helping support concentration, reducing common symptoms of dementia and Alzheimer's is poor sleep, anxiety, poor social skills, paranoia, poor concentration, poor ability to make decisions, analytical functioning. So essential oils, either applied directly or in an air mistifier, can do a long way in really balancing out those imbalances associated with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So stem cell research is still in progress. I think it's got a ways to go. This my contact information, you can order the book from naturaleyecare.com, even from Amazon. If you want to reach me, have any questions, I'm here to answer those. You have my email address as well as my phone number. And I thank everybody for the patience to listen to my rapid discussion today, but there's a lot of material to cover. I want to give you a sense that we can do a lot to help people, and the doctors are not doing it. And also, join us next week. Bring that back up again on Friday. Yeah, Maman will be there giving a presentation as well. Thank you so much.